Paddington in Peru is probably the worst in the franchise, but that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. So let's talk about it. But before we get started, as always, if you're new here, my name is Erin and I talk all things movies and TV, but really mostly movies. So if you're into that sort of thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. It would be greatly appreciated. And if you've already seen the movie, let me know your thoughts on it in the comments down below. But without further ado, let's talk about Paddington in Peru. Now, I'll be honest, this movie wasn't necessarily on my watch list this year because I hadn't seen the previous two movies, so about 2 weeks ago, I decided to jump into the first two Paddington movies to see what all the hype is about. And after watching those two movies, I can gladly say that I get it now. These Paddington movies just hit you right in the feels, and they have no business being as good as they are. So after I saw those first two movies, this third movie just shot right up to the top of my watch list. And in this third installment, Paddington travels to Peru to visit his Aunt Lucy, but when he realizes that she has gone missing, he and the Brown family set out to find her in the jungles of Peru. Jumping right into the good, and the first thing I have here is Paddington himself and really just this story overall. Now, as a very new Paddington fan, I think it's clear on why people love these movies so much, and it's because of this well-mannered, charmful bear that is at the heart of all of these movies. Paddington is one of those characters that I just can't get enough of, and even though this movie is the weakest in the trilogy, Paddington is still that same old bear that loves marmalade. He goes on this journey not only to find Aunt Lucy, but to also figure out where his true home is, whether that is in Peru or back in London. And in terms of the story, this one is a bit different from the first two. It's on a much bigger scale, and the adventure that they go on is easily the biggest one yet, but at this movie's core, it still feels like a Paddington movie. It's got all the charm and heartwarming moments that the first two had, and then on top of that, just like the first two movies, it absolutely nails the ending and will 100% leave you smiling. Next up for the good, I also enjoyed the new characters that were in this. Olivia Colman played a nun who I thought was a really fun character, and she also had this singing slash dancing number which was kind of random in the moment, but I also kind of enjoyed it, so I'm okay with it. Then we have Antonio Banderas, and he just looked like he was having a blast in his role. He was so committed, and honestly, he kind of stole the show in my opinion. They also gave him a pretty good character arc as well that involved his daughter that I thought was pretty cool and worked well. So yeah, I really enjoyed the new characters in this. I thought Olivia Colman and Antonio Banderas did a solid job in their roles. Moving on to the so-so, and the first thing I have here is the humor. Now, for me, the humor was kind of hit or miss. It was your typical silly, family-friendly humor that will definitely get the kids to laugh, and don't get me wrong, I did enjoy some humorous moments in this movie as well, especially from Paddington himself, but at the end of the day, overall, I just don't think this humor was really targeted towards me. So there were a few moments that just kind of fell flat for me. It still got that charming humor that the previous movies had, but I will say I think I prefer the humor in the first two movies than I do this one. Next up for the so-so is the recasting they had of Mrs. Brown in this one. Now, in the original two movies, she was played by Sally Hawkins, who I think did an amazing job in those first two movies, but now in this third movie, she is played by Emily Mortimer. Now, let me just start by saying that Emily Mortimer did a great job in this role. I have no problem with her performance at all in this movie. However, there were a couple scenes in this film towards the end that I think would have hit a lot harder if Sally Hawkins was still in that role. These were pretty emotional moments involving Mrs. Brown and Paddington, and even though they were good moments, there was just something that felt kind of off about them because Sally Hawkins wasn't in that role, and in my opinion, you definitely feel her missing presence not only in those moments, but in this movie as a whole. Again, Emily Mortimer did a fine job in this movie. There was just a little part of me that was kind of sad that Sally Hawkins wasn't in that role because she did such a great job in that role in the previous two movies. And finally, getting into the bad, and let's be honest, this is a Paddington movie, so there's not much bad in this thing at all, and there's really not much bad in the previous movies either. But if I had to pick something for this video, I would say it is pretty predictable, especially towards the end of this thing. But even with that said, that doesn't affect the fact that they still nailed the ending of this thing, and I guess that's just proof that even if your story is simple and pretty predictable, if you have a good story that resonates with your audience, then none of that matters. matters, and that is the case with this movie. So overall, even though this is the weakest Paddington movie, it's still pretty good. It's got that same Paddington charm and fun new characters, along with a heartwarming story for everyone to enjoy, so this is a movie that I would recommend. Those are my thoughts on Paddington in Peru. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments, and as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, get your Eazy Apparel at shopeasyapparel.com. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.